Hello, I'm Philip Kortz. I'm a research assistant with the Centre for European Studies and the Monnet Centre of Excellence here at Carleton University. This video is part of a series called the EU Policy Videos. I'm joined today by Dr. Ramūnas Vilpišauskas. Dr. Vilpišauskas is a professor of the Institute of International Relations and Political Science at Vilnius University. He's currently at Carleton University as the Konrad Adenauer Visiting Scholar on Transatlantic Relations. His main research interests include public policy analysis and public sector reforms, political economy of European integration, EU public policies, international political economy, and transatlantic relations. Thank you, Dr. Vilpišauskas.
Thank you for inviting.
Today we're going to be speaking about the recent parliamentary elections in Lithuania, the elections to the Seimas, which took place this past Sunday on October 27th. The elections were won by the Social Democratic Party of Lithuania, under Vilija Blinkevičiūtė, unseating the previous conservative Homeland Union Party. Dr. Vilpišauskas, why were voters unhappy with the previous ruling party? What issues led them to make the choices they did?
I think most of the voters that voted for Social Democrats or other parties which were in formal opposition and are likely now to become part of ruling coalition simply wanted a change of faces. I know it sounds very simplistic, but there was a lot of campaigning against Conservative Party, and it's not a new thing that most other parties which are on the left, which are in the opposition, they simply focus their criticisms on conservatives, not so much based on policy content, let's say wrong policy decisions, but more in terms of arrogant communication and the style of governing rather than the substance. So I think this worked, and as many observers also argue, it was not a vote for something, but it was a vote against conservatives that have been the main party in the ruling coalition for the last 4 years, and I think this is quite a correct explanation of such an election outcome.
And the Social Democrats won a plurality of the vote, but not a majority, which means that they are going to have to form a coalition with other parties in the Seimas. Now, they've discussed their intention of forming a coalition with two parties, the Democratic Union for Lithuania and the Farmers and Greens Union. What might this coalition stand for, and what might be some of the issues they go after?
Yes, it's again a typical feature of Lithuanian politics that we don't have usually a single party winning majority of seats in the parliament. Even the biggest winners get 1/3 or maybe a bit more of the whole of 141 seats in the parliament. So this time Social Democrats are estimated to have 52 out of 141, so they do need coalition partners, and it is likely that they will have those two parties that you mentioned as their two coalition partners to form center left-wing new ruling coalition, which will replace current center right-wing coalition of conservatives and liberals. And this kind of shifts between center-right and center-left we are seeing in Lithuania for most of the last 30 years. That's what political scientists called political pendulum swinging from left to the right, but almost never going to extremes. And this also is partly an answer to your question about the policies of possible policies of a new ruling coalition, because their election promises focused mostly on higher social benefits, higher budgetary spending, which was already increasing in recent years by the current center right-wing coalition. So that means it will be more or less continuation of the same. Maybe with some tactical changes. They suggested to increase minimum wage faster, for example, to increase some particular social benefits faster, to reform partly pension system, So mostly spending-related proposals, but of course they will face immediate challenge of how to fund their more generous promises. And I think that will be the first major reality test for this new ruling coalition. After it is formed, they will immediately have to decide on next year's draft budget. And I think this will be the first opportunity to see what do they intend in terms of funding, for example, tax increases or more borrowing, because I think that will be the focus of the debate in terms of domestic policies. Meanwhile, foreign security policies, they definitely will remain the same as they are now. Again, the question will be how to continue increasing defense funding, which is the key priority currently in Lithuania.
Now, onto the feasibility of this coalition. What are some of the possible challenges that these three potential coalition partners might run into? What might be some ideological differences between them, for example?
They should be quite aligned in terms of economic policies. They have some history of cooperation before. There might be some difference in terms of human rights issues, where Farmers and Greens Union is clearly more conservative than the other two parties, which I would describe as more liberal in terms of, Canadian sense of liberal policies, what concerns human rights, minority issues, and so on. But with respect to economic policies, I think they all have a tendency to represent left-wing parties. And in terms of foreign security policies, they basically represent a consensus which is quite strong in Lithuania among all centrist parties regarding the importance of being part of NATO, cooperation with other NATO allies, increasing defense spending to respond to the current geopolitical challenges, importance of European Union membership, and similar priorities. So I think they should be able to agree quite easily on this. Besides, I should also mention in Lithuanian political system, president who is elected popularly is an important actor in foreign security policy areas. So the fact that we had President Nausėda re-elected just recently in spring this year for the second term will provide even more continuity to foreign and security policies of Lithuania.
One of the most interesting developments in this recent election has been the rise of the new Nemunas Don party. What do you think of this party? Do you see them as a turn as part of a larger European turn towards populism, or as a reaction to something else? Do you think their presence in the Seimas will have actual tangible effects?
Well, as I said, I regard the success, relative success of newly established Nemunas party as more of a traditional inclination of Lithuanian voters to look for new faces in Lithuanian politics rather than as an expression of this trend that we see in many other European countries of politics becoming more radicalized, like in France, in recent national elections, also in the Netherlands, in regional elections in Germany, in national elections in Austria. We clearly see growing popularity of those so-called radical right-wing or left-wing parties. I don't see this happening in Lithuania because, the largest number of seats will in the new parliament will be held by two traditionally centrist parties, Social Democrats and Conservatives. So center holds in Lithuanian politics, as the famous phrase goes, and yeah, in this respect, I would say Lithuania is an exception from what's happening in recent years in many other European countries. In media, I would say the debates also focus mostly on the issues which are related to economic, social, policy matters where, well, the discussion is not about radical solutions. And there is, again, a lot of consensus about geopolitical matters, foreign security policy. So in media, you won't see such a big polarization, maybe except for the tendency to demonize conservatives. I think that's a specific Lithuanian politics feature of Lithuanian politics. But otherwise, I would say that most of the debates simply are about daily issues that concern voters and not about radical policies linked to migration or other divisive issues which characterize debates in many other countries.
How significant is the issue of climate change in this election? Do you think this new prospective coalition might approach EU-wide collaboration on the issue any differently than previous Lithuanian governments?
I think it could be probably argued that climate change was an issue that did not figure at all in this election campaign, or if it was discussed, it was probably from a rather critical point of view, meaning that there were some criticisms about the Green Deal of the European Union and related policies, about too strict regulatory norms that have been criticized in many European Union countries, for example, by farmers and associations that represent them. And I think it's quite illustrative that the Green Party, and it's a party which represents green issues. It's not Farmers and Greens union, because the latter represents clearly the interests of farmers. It has little to do with green policies. But there is another quite small party which is called Greens Party that campaigns on the basis of green issues, and it was among those that received the smallest support from the voters. It won't have any representation again in the parliament. So I think it is a sign that these issues are not considered important by majority of voters.
Now, we've talked about before that this is a political climate dominated by concerns over Russian aggression, and you've mentioned that there is consensus among the Lithuanian public that Russia does pose a threat, both to Lithuania and to Europe as a whole. Does this mean that we can predict very little change and instability, in fact, in Lithuanian foreign and defense policy?
Yeah, I'm sure that it will remain stable. The main question will be how to continue funding defense, which will probably be increased further from the current more than 3% of country's GDP, which is already relatively among the largest numbers in the NATO alliance. But Social Democrats, for example, and their likely candidate to become Minister of Defense, are supporting even more defense spending. So I think this trend, which was quite visible in recent years, will continue. And more generally, support for Ukraine, importance of NATO membership, of having NATO allies' military presence in Lithuania, preparing to host a German brigade by 2027, the end of 2027, all the work related to logistics of that. These will remain the most important issues in security policy field. And in terms of foreign policy, I also would see continuity as the defining feature of the new ruling coalition. Maybe there might be some change in tone of relations with China, because the decision of the current government to allow Taiwan to open Taiwanese representative office, called Taiwanese representative office in Vilnius, adopted in 2021, caused a very strong reaction from China that included for some time complete informal unannounced sanctions on all Lithuanian exports to China. And this produced a rather heated domestic debate between opposition and ruling coalition, which is not common really in Lithuania when we speak about foreign policy issues. So maybe, although the context is changing, of course, and the whole EU policy is becoming increasingly critical towards China, this might be the only area, I would say, where we might see a slight change of tone of speaking by the new ruling parties, but generally I'm sure there will be continuity.
Now, to sum up, what are some of the key lessons and takeaways that you think observers in North America and the rest of Europe should draw from these elections?
I would say there are at least two most important takeaways. One is, as we discussed, that in Lithuania, political center still holds, and we are seeing the same trend of former opposition, centrist parties that were in opposition replacing ruling centrist parties, in this case left center replacing the right center parties. So this is one important difference from what's happening in some other European countries where radical parties have become more prominent. The other takeaway, I would say, is that this importance of centrism and rather strong consensus about foreign security and defense policies among both center-right and center-left parties shows the importance of threats that Lithuania and more generally Baltic states, Central European states face at the moment. I have in mind threats posed by authoritarian, aggressive countries like Russia. And I think this presence of geopolitical threats can at least partly explain this very strong consensus on foreign security policies, which first of all includes continuous support to Ukraine and importance of having strong, effective alliances like NATO and the European Union.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.